In this tutorial, we are going to begin building out our application based upon tables that we created in a previous step. So we're going to start with simple things first. So we're going to click on the Customers tab that we created, and we're going to add a Customers record. To do that, we have to click first on the Customers table, and then we can drag off a record and drop it into our tab. Now, by itself, this doesn't do much, so we're going to need to add some controls. We do this by adding buttons to our layout. To do this, we can drag a button off of the palette. We're going to place it right here above our record, and we're going to give this one a name. We're going to call it New Customer. We can resize our button. Now, we need to give this button an action. To do that, we have the button selected, we click Button Actions on the toolbar, and then we pick a target for this button. So I'm going to double click this red highlighted area, which is the record. If I keep talking and we wait too long, it will time out and tell you that you've run out of time. No target selected, your time has expired. There's no problem if this happens, just click OK. And when you figure out what you want to do, just start again. So we're going to click Button Action, and we're going to connect this button to this record. It says Target Selected. Now we're going to select the action. So here we are simply going to choose Add Record. You notice that the actions listed here are the actions for the record that we had selected. Save record, delete record, add record, show a filter panel to allow you to choose records, apply certain query filters. We'll cover all of these things later. For right now, we're simply going to add a record when the person clicks the button. We also need a button to save our records, so we're going to come up here and add another button, and we're going to call this one Save. And we are going to connect it to the same record. And we're going to choose the action as Save. So when we click this record, when we click this button, it creates a new customer record. When we click this button, it tells it to save. We could also add another button if we wanted to, called Find. And we could use this button simply to choose the action to show the filter panel. We'll get into this later, but it allows you to search for specific customers. Now, let's run this application as it stands right now to see what we've got so far. To do this, we click the Run As button. A window opens up. There's nothing here because we have no data. So we click New Customer. We could type in a name. And an address. Okay, and if we want to save this record, we just click Save. We can continue adding new customers. So let's call this one John White. Okay, so now you notice we have a scrolling list of the two records that we've added. We can save this. We can continue adding more and more and more. Now, let's say we wanted to just find those records that were in California. We could click Find. We'll cover this in more depth later, but we could come up here and say we wanted the state to begin with California and click Find, and we just have that one record. If we bring up the query panel, clear it, it will show us all of the records, which are the two that we just entered. You have complete control over the layout in this record, so let's go back and change a couple of things. We're going to close this window, this tab rather, so that it doesn't get out of sync. So let's say we want our record to be a little wider and let's say we want the city to be here and the state to only be a couple of characters wide. So these are just pieces of text. You can move them and lay them out however you'd like. If you wanted to put the customer ID over here and move the name up, you have complete layout flexibility and you have complete control over the color, style, fonts, etc. of all of these items. The height of this record determines how many are visible. So you can see how large that record will be. It's just these 3 rows. If we make the record that they sit in this large, let's see what happens when we run it. You'll see that we show 2 of them just like this. So you can set up things to be repeating records, to look like tables, or however you want for your particular application's needs. Let's go back. Before we can do much with this application, we are going to need to put some data in some of the tables so we have something to work with. Earlier we added this tab called Lists, and we added a menu object within that tab, but we never got any further than that. So let's click on this first menu option and rename it and call it Products. And let's call the second menu option Order Status. In the Products menu option, we are going to select the Products table, and then we're going to drag over and put the Products record within it. This is exactly the same process as before, where we added a New and Save button. That will tell it to save the products that we enter, and this will tell it to add a new products record. We need to do the same thing for order statuses. We're going to click down here on the order status menu option, click over here on the order status table, drag a record off, and then add a couple of buttons for creating new order status entries and saving. Add a record. This button will be connected up to save. Okay, so what have we just done here? Let's run the application and make sure that it does what we expect. So we're back here, we have, these are our customers. These are our new lists. We don't have any products yet, so we're going to add a product called running shoes. And let's say that's the price. And we're going to add another product called, and let's say and we're going to add another product called say they're $55. To keep it simple, we're just going to use these 3 products right now. We also need to set up what we want to use for order statuses. Here we might have one that's a new order, confirmed, packing. This is the stage where we're putting the stuff in the box and it's already been picked. And finally, shipped. And we may want to put a number next to these so they always appear in the order that we've specified here in our very simple list. New order, confirmed, packing. Otherwise, they'll probably end up showing alphabetically. So here we have new order, confirmed, packing, and shipped. We're going to close this tab and go back to the design window. Now let's begin to build out our order entry system. This is going to occur in multiple phases because we're going to use this in multiple different tutorials to show different features. To begin with, let's start simple. We are going to have an orders record inside of this orders tab. But let's review this orders table before we begin. We click Modify Table. We can see that we have an order ID, which is its primary key. We have an order date. We have a customer ID that is linked to the customers table customer ID column. We have an order status, which is linked to the order status table, and we have a ship date. Okay. We're going to drag this record off. Now, let's begin by just seeing what we have so far. We're going to need to add a couple of basic buttons. Okay, let's see what we have so far when we try to enter an order. We don't have any orders yet, which is why this is blank. When we go to add a new order, it's going to ask for an order date. The first thing we want is we probably want the order date to default to today. So let's see how we do that. If we come back here, if we close that tab and we come back here and we click on the order date field, we could specify a formula. Formulas can either be default value or continuously recalculated like you would find in a spreadsheet. In this case, we just want a default value. There's a lot of help information here about what you can do with formulas. They're very powerful and very flexible. But we're going to cut to the chase and just use the formula at today, which will insert today's date when the record is created. And we are going to make this read-only. Let's see how this looks when we run the application now. When we go to add a new record, we notice that today's date is automatically inserted. Next, we want to choose a customer. Because this customer ID field is linked to the customers table, a pick list or drop-down is automatically assigned to it. Simply by clicking on this, we can see the records in the customer table. So we might pick John White. However, just having this number here without any other information isn't terribly interesting. We probably want to show the customer information right here on the order. So let's close this tab. The way we're going to do this is an orders record. You can tell because I have it selected and it says it's the orders record up here. If I click on the customers table and then drag a record off and place it inside of this orders record, it links the two together. So if I were to click on the orders record and then click on link to, you will see that it has connected them by the customer ID field. This will not work if you do not have your database structured correctly. If you try to drop a record inside of another record that does not have common information with which it could be linked, you will receive an error when you go to run the application. What happens if we just leave it just like this and then we go run the application? There are no orders here because we haven't saved any yet. Let's create a new order. The customer ID, we pick it like before. We choose John White, but when we do so, the information is filled out here. We can also pick an order status. These are the ones we entered into the order status table. Let's call it a new order. Again, it's probably best if these start out with new order being the default value. Let's close this tab. Go to the order status. And again, let's give it a default value. Because this is text, it needs to be enclosed within quotes. So now, because this column or this field is linked to the other table, the values must match exactly. If you were to try something like that, it would not work because there is no entry called that in the other table. So the default value must match exactly. Let's run this and see what we have now. We're going to create a new record, a new order. You'll see that now the order date is today because we added that formula earlier, and the value for the order status is new order. And when we select customer, it shows their information. If we change the customer to Ron Black, it changes the information. Now we can just click Save. Clearly there's a lot more information we would want here. For example, the information about what the person is actually ordering. Continuing on with this order form, we are going to select the record that is the order record. That's a customer record. You can see it up here. When you click on this, you're actually selecting the orders record. And now we're going to place some order items inside of the order. Click on the order items table, take a record, drag it off. We can drop it in down here. We are going to want to make this look tabular, so to do that, we are going to reorganize the layout of the fields. Not all fields need to be present if they are just foreign keys that are linked to parent records. So this order item ID can be hidden. We can just select the item and click Edit, Delete. We are not deleting the field in the database. We are only deleting it on the form visually. The same thing can be done with here. And the order ID, again, is linked to up here. We do not need to really show this here, so we can go ahead and delete these. And these are just text labels. We can delete these as well. So now what we have is a product to select, and then a quantity to select, or rather a quantity to enter. And we have this showing up in a tabular form. So let's see what we have just by doing this. If we click on this record, we will notice now that there are now two links. This was the link linking the order to the customer by customer ID. And this is a new link that we just created, linking the orders record to the order items record by the order ID. The reason it can do this is because we've already established the links when we created the tables here. If that was incorrect, none of this would work. So let's test this application or run it and see what we have so far. Now we have this one order that we started on before that appears, but there are no items here. So we're going to need to add some controls to add order items. Let's do that. We're going to add a button here, and rather than calling it new, we don't have to call it new, we're just going to give it a plus sign to indicate that we're going to use it to add a new item. And we are going to connect this add record to the order item. And we're going to say add record. We do not need to add a save button because when we click this save button, this entire section will be saved, including the order items. So let's run it and see what we have. Now when we click this, it adds a new order item line. We can click on the product ID. Again, this is the order items table, and because it was linked to the products table, that list shows automatically, and these are the products we entered. So we're going to choose some cotton socks and say we want 2. Now that's not very interesting because it doesn't show us the product name or anything else. Just like up here, when we chose the customer ID, we probably want it to fill in the information for the product. Let's close this tab and go back to there. So how are we going to do that? We click this object, which is the order items record, and then we are going to click on the products table, and we're going to put a products record inside of the order items. And we're going to only show the things we want to show. So we're going to delete these, put the name and the price, and we're going to resize it. Now when you go to actually finish your application, this box with the extra lines on it would be annoying. You can come up here and you can make it transparent so that you don't see it. That can be confusing while you're still working on the application, so you might want to leave that to the last step. There is a new feature in Parasql added recently where you can click on a field and then you can say edit select parent and it'll show you what it belongs to. So that if you selected this quantity field and you said select parent, you would see that it is part of the order items record. Whereas this name field, if you selected parent, this name field, if you selected parent, would highlight the products record. Let's run this and see what we get. So this is the existing order that we were entering. We're going to add a new item. We're going to say cotton socks, and you notice that as soon as we pick this, it shows the product information that's related. Just like when we chose the customer number up here, Joe Smith, it shows Joe Smith's information here. Same process. And we can click Save, and we can add other items. So let's say we want some walking shoes to go with that. And if the cotton socks, let's say we have 2 pair of those and 1 pair of walking shoes. And we can add another order here. Ron Black, it's also a new order. We could change its status to something else. And he could say running shoes, 1 pair. And now we have 2 orders. You can display as many records in here as you want. Let's, for example, say you only want to see 1. Let's close this tab. You would select this orders record, and then up here where it says results per page, you would just click 1. And then when you go to run the application, you will only see a single order, even though there are multiple of them, and you can page through them like this. We probably would like to know what the total price is for the item, and we probably need a total at the bottom as well. So we may as well use this time to show you how calculated fields work. Close this tab, go back to the design window. Up here, we want to add a field that does not exist in the database, although it could. Calculated fields can be in the database or they can be virtual, which do not exist in the database. We are going to add a virtual field and calculate the total line item price from price times quantity. To do that, we go over here to the palette, we drag off a virtual field, we place it inside of this order item record, we choose its type, or you can use virtual fields for a number of things, as you will see throughout the rest of the tutorials. Number field is what we want, and we are going to give it a formula. So we click on the virtual field, we click the formula button, and the first thing we're going to want to do is get the quantity field. So we look for order items quantity. This gets the value of that. The following piece is tricky and probably requires some thought on your part. The formulas are explained in detail here, including all of the valid syntax. However, one of the more subtle things is that because of the products table is a record, we can't take a simple value of the price. It will give you an error. That's because that record could theoretically contain 0 records, 1 records, or 100 records. In our application, it can really only contain a single record. However, because of that, we need to use an aggregate function in order to get its value. Obviously, if there's only 1 record, sum, average, min, and max will all return the exact same value. But we'll just use sum of the product prices. So we have the quantity times the price. But again, we're using the sum and not the value. And the reason for this is because this is actually a record. And again, the formula does not know if there are 0 records or 100. There is always 1 because we've got it linked by product number. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. And you will see that we get 2 at $7.95 equals $15.90, not formatted as a currency yet, and 1 at $55 equals that. Let's go back and change the formatting. We can just click on it, and let's format it as a currency. And now when we run the application, you will see that they show up as currencies. Let's say we wanted to add a total at the bottom. We could add another virtual field down here. It's also a number field. And we drop this outside of this record, but inside of this record. These subtleties are very important with calculated fields because the formulas reference things based upon the record that they are in. So what do we want here? We want a total of this field, but this has a crazy name, ID 1096. So let's start by renaming it to item total. That way, when we refer to it down here, it'll make much more sense. So we click on this virtual field, we can edit its formula, and we want a total. So we want a sum of the order items, item total. That's the virtual field that we just changed the name of. Click OK. Now let's make this also formatted as a number, as a currency rather. Now let's run this and see what we have. Here, 2 at $7.95, 1 at $55, and then summing the $15.90 and the $55 gives you the $70.90. If we were to add additional items to this order, and let's say we have 10 pair of walking shoes, we can see that it's $550, $69, and so forth.